A very good Tuesday morning to you. Thank you again for joining us on iTunes to Him. We're continuing this week with our theme of the week that changed the world, with this being Passion Week. Yesterday we looked at the coming King, and today we're going to be reading out of John chapter 13 and talk about the compassionate servant. During His last few hours with His disciples, Jesus demonstrated to them that He came to serve. So let's pick up the story beginning in verse number 1 of John 13. Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that His hour had come, that He should depart from this world to the Father, having loved His own who were in the world, He loved them to the end. And supper being ended, the devil having already put it into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray Him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into His hands, and that He had come from God and was going to God, rose from supper, and laid aside His garments, took a towel, and girded Himself. After that He poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel with which He was girded. Then He came to Simon Peter, and Peter said to Him, Lord, are you washing my feet? Jesus answered and said to him, What I am doing you do not understand now, but you will know after this. Peter said to Him, You shall never wash my feet. Jesus answered him, If I do not wash you, you have no part with me. Simon Peter said to Him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. There's some powerful truths that we can learn from our scripture reading today. The first thing is we see here the heart of a servant. Jesus was the ultimate example of a servant. He showed us how to serve. You know, serving others. That's not a very popular topic in our world today. It's easier to talk serving than it is to actually serve. You know, when we serve, it's not always convenient. A servant never asks, what's in it for me? A servant serves when no one else is watching. A servant does not care who gets the credit. In fact, servanthood must be caught and not just taught. Jesus, He was not expecting a reward. He did this because He wanted to do it. That should be the heart of a servant. Jesus served those who did not deserve to be served. That should be the heart of a servant. Think about this story. He's washing the feet of Simon Peter, those very feet that were going to be running throughout the night, watching Jesus as the proceedings were taking place. And before the night was over, he would deny Christ 3 times. He was washing the feet of Judas, those same feet who would run to the religious leaders and sell out Jesus. He washed the disciples' feet, 10 other men, feet that before the night would be through, would run away in fear, not knowing what was about to happen. May God give us the heart of a servant. Secondly, there's the humility of a servant. When you read this story, the thing that stands out to me is that Jesus laid aside His garment. He had already laid aside His heavenly glory to be born in human flesh. In fact, He set aside His own will, and He became entirely receptive to the Father's divine will. That's what the Apostle Paul was talking about in Philippians chapter 2, when he said that he took upon himself the form of a servant. You know, servanthood requires us to strip off our religious robes and replace them with a garment of humility. Humility must be in our heart. It's not something we do, but it must be who we are. Jesus was the ultimate example of humility for you and for me. Finally, there is the honor of servanthood. What do I mean by that? In our story it says that He took up the towel. You know, I believe God is looking for someone who will take up the towel and honor Him with their actions. I believe He's looking for someone who will weep with tears, to take it upon themselves to wash the filthy feet of the bound, the bruised, and the broken. Someone who's willing to lay down their very own crown and take up the towel of servanthood. I believe if we would see more servants, more people that would honor Him, then the world would see more of Jesus in us. You know, it's an honor to please Him. And as I look at this story, the thing that stood out to me is the last thing that He did was He went and He took water and He poured it into a basin to cleanse the dirty feet of men. And then in just a few days, He's going to pour out His precious blood to cleanse the dirty souls of all mankind. I want to ask you today, Jesus was our example. He was that compassionate servant. Will you take up the towel? Will you be that servant that He's looking for today? May God help us to be an example of the heart of Jesus. Thank you so much. We look forward to joining with you again tomorrow. Until then, may the blessing and the glory and the honor of God be upon your life today as we certainly remember Him and what this week is all about. Until tomorrow, have a great day.